What a day. Eggs and bacon. Chris, shut up! This shit's got to stop. I've seen you do videos for that chump Jason and that bitch-ass Michael Myers. Where's my video? So let me get this straight. You want me to review your movies just like I did Michael and Jason? I'm the bastard of 100 maniacs. Dozens of children have fallen before my blades. I deserve to have my own video review of my movies. They're much better than Jason's or Michael's. Yeah, okay. I'll get to it right away. Hey guys, welcome back to The Well-Rounded Dude. My name is Chris. Today we're in the dream world, which is honestly a little weird to have you guys in my dreams, but we're going to make the best of it. Again, if you're new here, welcome. We cover a whole bunch of topics on this channel, trying to elevate you to that well-rounded status. At the request of Mr. Krueger, we are going to be covering the Nightmare on Elm Street series today. I am a big fan of the movies. I got this box set years ago. It's pretty cool. It's got the original 7 movies, and of course they've made a couple since then, so we're going to hop into it right now. So at the bottom of this list, and I think every Nightmare fan is going to agree with me, we have the 2010 remake. I mean, there's just not much to say about this. It's bad, but not defending it, but I think that a lot of the hate for this movie comes from the fact that they explicitly name Freddy Krueger as a child molester when it was just implied in the original series. I always assumed that he was one anyway. So I think people got upset when it was actually stated that he was one in this movie, but it's really not that good. So some of these I have a hard time ranking. It's kind of, you catch me on whatever day and I'll tell you whether I think one movie is better than the other. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge, is at the bottom of the list. It's not one of the ones I watch the most. I think Jesse as a protagonist was really kind of lame. It was a weird movie, especially with his dancing. It was just pretty bad. But it does have one of my favorite quotes from Freddy, even if it's kind of weird. I mean, Freddy works best in your dreams. Having Freddy come into the real world is kind of strange. But when he does, having the line, "You are all my children now," to a pool party full of scared teenagers, that's pretty cool. But the rest of this movie, down on the list. Next on this list, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. It's another one. I had a hard time debating between this one and the next one we're going to talk about, and the reason why this is lower on the list is because I just watched the other one the other day. I'll occasionally catch that one. This one I've seen a couple of times. It's very weird. It's very meta, very camp, and spoiler alert, Freddy Krueger having a daughter with some really bad acting, in my opinion, it doesn't work. And as a final death for Freddy, it doesn't work, in my opinion. So it's why it's pretty low on the list. A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. What can I say about this one? It's not as good as the last one. And it does have one of the coolest death scenes in the series with Dan on the motorcycle. And from what I've heard, they put a lot more effort into that, but because of the Motion Picture Association, they had to cut a lot of it. But it is not the greatest movie. I didn't care for the makeup. They made Freddy look a little bit older, which, why would you? He's supposed to be immortal. Uh, it's just kind of a weak premise, and it's just not that great in my opinion. So I neglected to mention part of the reason why some of these sequels, particularly this one and some of the Friday the 13th sequels, didn't come off as good is because at that time they were planning to do Freddy versus Jason, even back in the 80s. And when deals fell through, they just kind of moved on to separate sequels, and they didn't have as much prep time as they would have in some of the better sequels. Therefore, you get movies like The Dream Child and Jason Takes Manhattan. Now we're getting into some of the better ones. Now, some people will disagree. This is lower on my list, but Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. For this one, this is a lot of people's favorite, and I never quite understood that. I kind of do, but to be honest, I think obviously the rest of them that's going to be on this list is better. But it's very cool. We have introductions by Patricia Arquette. We have one of the coolest death scenes ever was when one of the kids was being a puppet. Freddy was using him as a puppet, and you see his veins from his feet and his hands being as he's led to a window. Very cool special effects, and that's one of the things I love most about the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Pretty much all of the early 80s horror. Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th. They use practical effects. I can't talk. I'm stuck in a dream. What can I say? Practical effects, special effects makeup was heavy in that back into the 80s, and that stuff always looked better to me than the CGI crap that we get with like this. So that's why I do love this movie. You get the return of Heather Langenkamp, who ages like a fine wine. She is gorgeous. But yeah, that's all I got to say about the third one. All right, and next, again, probably controversial that it's this low on the list, but the original A Nightmare on Elm Street with Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp. I do love this movie. You know, it's the first appearance of Freddy Krueger. It has some great, memorable death scenes, such as Johnny Depp. This is also Johnny Depp's first movie. Lauren, Johnny Depp's first movie. But he gets sucked into the bed, and then blood shoots out of his bed. It's a great scene, very cool. A lot of special effects, practical special effects. The story is good. We see some weird stuff with Freddy that they kind of leave alone in later movies, but you know, great blueprint, great start was with this movie, and it was a huge unexpected success, which really put, I was going to say launch, but it put New Line Cinema on the map. One of my personal favorites, and we're getting to the end, so it's kind of hard to choose. It's like choosing between your children, or in my case, my non-existent children. But Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, is probably one of my favorites. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's the first one I saw, to be honest. I didn't get to see them in order, unfortunately. This is the first one I saw. I rented it on a whim, and was just mesmerized by Freddy Krueger. It's really cool because Freddy he's different than Jason and Michael and Chucky and all the other ones in this instance, is that they're always trying to hide or be stealthy. They don't want you to know that they're around until it's like the end of the movie. Freddy wants you to know. He's in your face. He wants you to know that it's him, and that he's going to scare you by the thing that gets to you the most, or by mutilating himself in front of you to get that terrified reaction. That's what makes Freddy Krueger so different than the other ones. He's truly evil, and he can't be stopped. Like, there's no real way to stop Freddy. Like, unlike Jason and Michael, you know, you can stop him temporarily, but they'll be back. Freddy, you kind of can, but he'll always be back. There's really no stopping him. Even in all these movies with all the ends and the Freddy's dead and such, there's real no way to stop him. He just keeps coming back. So that last point plays predominantly in this next one, Freddy versus Jason. It's coming in number 2 at this list, but I mean, it didn't lose by much. I do love this movie just because I'm a huge fan of both of them, and it took a very, very, very long time to get both of them to appear in a movie. But the last point I was making with you really can't stop Freddy Krueger is really made in this movie with he's trapped in hell because nobody remembers him. That's really what takes away his power, but he's still there. He still concocts a way for him to be reborn through Jason Voorhees by getting people to remember him, and he comes back. But a lot of great action between the two, and the makeup, of course, is at its top notch. Since this was the last one that Robert Englund was in, like 2003, it explains why the practical effects are at its best here. Not a fan of the squirting blood so much. I'm more of a fan of just like the normal, if there's bleeding, but not the spraying. But can't love everything about him, right? But comes in number 2 at the list for good reason. 2 horror icons battling it out with some great kills. So now, my favorite movie out of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So Wes Craven's New Nightmare is very different from any other film in this series because they break the fourth wall. Well, they don't really break the fourth wall, but it's used with the same actors from the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but they're playing a fictionalized version of themselves. So we have Heather Langenkamp again. She ages like a fine wine. She looks gorgeous in this movie. This was done about, I think it was 10 years after the original. And spoiler alert, the villain in it, it's Freddy, but it's a different form of Freddy. So the story is that this evil entity, is trapped by stories. It was trapped in the story of A Nightmare on Elm Street as Freddy Krueger. And that's how you have power over this entity. As long as the story goes, this evil entity is trapped. But when the story dies, he's free. And once he's free, he can terrorize you anyway, and he likes being Freddy. So we get a very different version of Freddy Krueger. Once again, played by Robert Englund. But a lot of fans in the series will notice that he's not wearing a glove. Like, that's his hand. He's got a fifth claw that comes out of his thumb, and he's not quipping. He's just very darker. He's more terrorizing. He's a much scarier, more evil version of Freddy. And it's just very cool to see Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund playing different versions of themselves, seeing Wes Craven actually in the movie, and he wrote and directed. I mean, he returned to write, direct, and tell this story. He even has a part in it. Even the producers from A New Line have a part in it. Some of the actors from the old movies had a part in it. It's just a very clever way to do something very scary. It is a very scary movie, and probably one of the scariest death scenes is Freddy attacking Julie the babysitter. Once the adults can't see that it's Freddy Krueger doing it, but we as the audience sees it as he drags her around the room. It's too cool. It's a very awesome scene. So by far my favorite out of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Alright guys, so that's it. That covers my Nightmare on Elm Street film ranking. Hopefully now I can be let out of the dream world, but please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, do all the YouTube things, help us fight the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to check out our website, thewellroundeddude.com. Dude15 gets you 15% off your total purchase, and really now, I hope I wake up from this nightmare.
Hey, all right?
That was crazy.
You gotta get to work.
Is it morning already?
Yeah.
I had a crazy dream.
What was it about?
Freddy Krueger and a video review. It's
crazy.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a shower.
One, two, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again.